session has started, so let's start. Hello, everyone, and welcome for another Evolve expert session number 73. And today we sit down with Diego Sampaio, the co-founder of GlobalFi, the frictionless path for entrepreneurs expanding into the US from banking to compliance to market entry. Diego helps founders turn "we want to expand into the US" into "we've truly launched." Diego is also a member of the Evolve Commerce Club, so I'm more than thrilled to have him with us today. And just before we start, some acknowledgements. So thanks to Ermit, our platform for over 70 Evolve sessions, and our ecosystem partners, Braze, Sinatra, and PagBank, for enabling high trust and high impact collaboration. Diego, we always start with a controversial question. And the controversial question for you is, if the US is the world's largest e-commerce market, why do more than 60% of international brands retreat within 24 months? And for some context, in 2023, the US e-commerce hit 1.1 trillion USD, yet many expansions fail due to underestimated complexity and policy risk.
Thanks very much, Carlos, for the opportunity and for the introduction. And you did a good research. Congratulations. So, look, I have a really, I've been doing business in the US since 2011, when I wanted to expand my first company, a technology company, a software as a service to the US. In the first years until I moved to the US, I can tell you that I had what happens at that time. It's usually what happens with the majority of the entrepreneurs, that they try to expand to the US and they fail. That is lack of focus and lack of investment in time, expertise in, and creating the right strategic view and strategic operations to allow you to grow your business in the US. What I usually tell is that setting up and managing an entity in the US is really, really simple. I mean, not just GlobalFi. There's plenty of other service providers that help in the terms of establishing the business, the banking account, the address, and the tax. So going through that compliance part is not hard. What is the key challenge is to understand the market and actually having the founder or the entrepreneur on the other side, establishing that they have a clear goal and a clear vision of growing the US, and then focusing in doing that process. So from our internal research surveys with the clients that are asking us to dissolve their company, or when they churn, they cancel the service with us, the high majority is not because their product was not accepted in the US, or the services. It's mostly because they never put enough focus to make that a viable product, a viable company. I like to make like to compare with someone with a company, let's say in Santa Catarina or in the south of Brazil, wanting to expand to the northeast from Brazil. I mean, although you may be a well-known brand in the south of Brazil, I mean, once you're getting into a new market, another state, you have to put focus on there. You have to invest money on that new expansion, right? Or someone that is here in Portugal wanting to expand to Spain. It's the same thing. You have to have a clear vision where you're going and how you're going to deploy that capital and effort to have success in the new market. So from my experience, the key challenge for anyone looking to expand their company internationally or globally, it's more towards the focus on learning the new marketing, adapting the product, understand what the nuances, uh, uh, and creating and testing and creating the right strategy for that market than anything else.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing your perspective. I would like maybe to this was not it. As I said, we have a script, we have an idea of what to follow. But I've been in Europe now for 12 years, in Denmark. I've been doing international expansion mostly in Brazil and then Europe. But I've worked with Americans. And I think when we look at a macro cultural aspect, there is a characteristic in Americans which I find it very interesting. I might be, I hope I'm not going to be misinterpreted, but this is an impression I have, which is Americans are more transactional, whereby in Europe relationships take longer. Europeans are more conservative. That's my feeling. That's broadly speaking. So things here will take time. Whereby in America and the US, you can things are typically 10 times bigger. Everything is big, 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 big portions, big, big Mac, big everything.
Mhm.
And so I think there's also this idea that when you go and expand into the US, well, you will need to have a big budget. You have to buy the market. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's an impression I have. Opposed to Europe, I think Europeans are so conservative in the way they do business. And again, this is a very broad observation that I have. Maybe you have nuances, of
Mhm.
course, in every market you do. But what are your thoughts on now you've been in Portugal? You operate a lot with Latin American entrepreneurs, expanding into the US. So you're a global citizen. You've been in the US for a decade. What are your perceptions on those cultural aspects
Mhm.
when doing business? They're way more aggressive as well, the Americans. Like when
Sure. Yeah.
investing and things like that. Yeah.
And way more direct than we're gonna have in
Mhm.
Latin America and at least in Portugal. So look, I spent 27 years in Brazil, 10 in the US, and a year here in Portugal. And I did business in the three countries, and it's different in each one of them. And even at GlobalFi,
Mhm.
that we have customers from, I mean, we've served customers from over 100 different countries, but our main market, it's let's say 20 countries, most Latin America and Western Europe. Each country, they have a different way of doing business, right? Uh, I think that you're correct when you say that in the US, consumers they are way more transactional than other countries. We also have to understand that the US is not just the traditional. I'm going to use a term that it's usually used, like traditional white American from Texas or from whatever, right? The US, I mean, you have like 2 million Brazilians in the US. You have 40% of, I think, that from the US citizens, they have some sort of Hispanic heritage. I mean, even the US consumer has been changing in the past 30, 40 years, right? It's different than it was 30 years ago. So the fact that they are more transactional, it may be a challenge, but it can be also an opportunity. At the same time, they're not worrying where you come from, uh, where is your where in general, okay, where your product was manufactured, as long as you're delivering the value they're expecting for the product or for from the service. Um, so again, the transactional part is something that may be something good and maybe something bad, and this will impact each each business area in a different way. So look, if you are doing e-commerce, I mean, I don't remember when was the last time that I checked where the brand I was buying from or where the Amazon seller was from, right? Just wanted to buy from Amazon, get the product, and that was it. So I mean, it just matter. When you're hiring software as a service, the same thing. You don't know where the developer from the platform that we are AirMeet we are using right now, where they are based at, right? We're just extracting the value from the platform. On the other hand, when you go like to uh, uh, some other areas like software computing or maybe a strategic computing or whatever, then of course, then it's a different process. Then you have
Mhm.
to deeply adapt to your speech, the way that you're going to negotiate with them, your terms. Uh, Way different that happens here in Portugal or that used to happen in Brazil. Right? On the other hand, usually the sales cycles are shorter than you're going to have in Europe,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
People, uh, entrepreneur, business owners in the US, they have a budget to spend, even small business, and they know that if they spend that and they get and ROI, that's what they're looking for. So I'm thinking from my experience there, I saw that happening a lot. Small companies investing because they were getting ROI from their investments in terms of equipment, technology, software, people, whatever. So yes, there are nuances. There, some of them can make doing business in the US harder, but at the same time, that same nuances, if you look from the other perspective, you can see opportunities there.
Perfect. And so, when it comes to expanding into the US, what are the first, let's say, three operational decisions a foreign founder must make before, registering their US entity? What are some common
Sure.
mistakes as well?
Sure. Look, I would tell that the first decision that they have to make, it's if they're gonna invest their time and their efforts in making the business happen, right? I mean, we
Mhm.
have here in the session Pierre from ChipSmart, for example. I'm pretty sure they work with some companies from Brazil that they are selling to the US or that they want to sell into the US, but they don't invest. They don't put the effort to make that happen. Maybe because the
Mhm.
local market is big enough for them and they are succeeding, right? So I would tell that the first decision in terms of deciding if you really will invest in that process. And this is not related to the size of the company, but to the goals of the owner or the decision maker.
Mhm.
That's a fact. Then the second thing is in terms of figuring out the right tax structure, legal structure, and also where to incorporate the business. Right? If it's going to be an LLC in Wyoming or a corporation in Delaware, or if they're going to do in Florida or whatever. So that comes to the location and to the business structure. And then the third thing I would tell that is to look for a good partner. And that I can tell from my experience as an entrepreneur from Brazil, wanting to create a company in the US, because I did that in 2012 and I didn't have the right guidance. And when I moved to the US and I really wanted to operate the business, we were owning taxes to the IRS. The business was solved with the state and so on. So I would tell that what I would what I would suggest is understand if you're going to really put effort and focus on that, then to figure out where you're going to establish your business, even if it's online, and how you're going to do it in terms of tax strategy. And then the third one, looking for a good partner that could help me in that process.
And where do you think brands often misjudge any complexity? So, for example, I really like observing the origin stories of any entrepreneur because the origin story explains a lot where they are today. So, from owning taxes to the IRS and something you maybe you didn't pay attention or you overlooked, then you founded you have the company that today is helping thousands of entrepreneurs. So what is the one thing that people or brands probably operate a lot with brands as well entering the US they misjudge pardon.
That's a good question, Carlos. I think one of the things is that it's the value of their brand, or
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they already have experience somewhere else and then they're going to use the same experience to do that in the US. I think that from my point of view, when when you have a successful brand in your home country, if you're expanding to a new country, you're actually starting a business from scratch with an advantage, of course, because now you have a back office and you have 10 years or whatever time of experience and knowledge. But again, you're restarting in a new environment. It's the same thing here, Evolve, right? So let's say you're now focused on um, Brazil, but then you want to start focusing growing the community in Dubai. Same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting to Dubai with no networking. You're gonna
For sure.
look for the right partners and then learning and
Yeah.
establishing and moving on. I think that one of the misjudgment is like this. I have a pretty strong brand in my market. I'm gonna get there with some advantage. And unfortunately, that's not what usually happens. And I think that even if we get the big, like well-known cases from Brazil, Havaianas, Farm, Vitex, and I mean all other companies from Brazil that we know that they expanded abroad, they had the chance
Mm-hmm.
is to readapt
Mm-hmm.
and understand that although they may be big somewhere else, I'm sorry, in that new country, they are a newcomer.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think my learning is, evolve. Let's say we are a house of experts and people coming from all multiple markets. And so whenever I need to expand into a new region, of course, I'm going to have internationals in those new regions, but there's nothing that replaces like a local, someone from that specific market that already has an ecosystem around themselves. Let's
Mhm.
say if you're a strong consultant, you already know people. So that is definitely very important. When it comes to the US has a very peculiar banking system as well, credit score system. So if you could perhaps mention that, what's how is it that GlobalFi? So let's say I have a roadmap. I want to tap into the US. I'm a founder. I'm a brand. What are the other things that I need to make sure in this market entry? So I need to open an entity. Then I'm
Mhm.
probably gonna have to establish my company there. There's a state which you mentioned there. Could be at Wyoming, could be Florida, could whatever. And then you also have to open up a bank account,
Like,
right? And then there's a credit score. There's a few complexities there that I heard about and never lived in the US. Been there a few times, but what are the other things that you judge it's important,
sure.
and how does GlobalFi help this entrepreneurs
Sure.
settle?
Sure. I think that although the financial system in the US is complex in terms of the way that it operates, uh, um, it's one of the countries that is the easiest place for you to open a local bank account, even if you're not a resident,
Hmm.
right? For example, if I'm in Brazil, I can open a bank account in in Europe with Revolut, right? So right nowadays, there's a lot of tools that allows you to open like those fintechs and neobanks accounts everywhere in the world. And in the US, you can do that. You are able to do that since 2018, 2019. So GlobalFi, we have partnerships with Mercury, for example, and Lily. They're fintechs, and Relay. They are all fintechs that provide bank accounts in the US, and the they are open to work with international founders. So mostly, if you're from South America, from Europe, the majority, other than Venezuela and Cuba, the other countries or Ukraine, unfortunately, the countries you
Sure.
are able to establish a bank account over there. And the process is pretty simple. It's online. I mean, in our case, we have a partnership, so our clients do that directly from our platform. They just log in, click, I want to open an account on Mercury, and then we upload the information that we already have, and they just finish the process. So it's pretty simple. Now, once you have the bank account, creating a
Hmm.
credit score, then of course is another challenge. uh,
Hmm.
Once you have the bank account, you have a debit card, and that debit card you can use anywhere in the world and even in the US as a credit card. The only difference that uh, yesterday I was answering a friend that telling that, look, Mercury doesn't offers a credit card, they offers a debit card, so I can use to online purchase. And no, in Europe, in the US is different. You can use your debit card to do a traditional purchase online. So you're gonna have access to the whole financial system from the US. Then establishing a credit score is another. A credit score, it's another topic. I think that it took me probably 5 years after I was living in the US to 5 years, no, 4 years, to be able to get a credit card with a real a real credit limit. Other than that was like 500, 1,000, 1,500, and so on. But the financial system in the US is still open and easy to
Hmm.
manage, even from abroad.
But Diego, a question then is like the credit score is let's say I'm a business,
Mhm.
I'm a legal entity, and a person. Is it the same? You have a credit score for the person and also for a business, or a business also needs a credit score? That's what I'm saying.
So it depends on the structure. On a
Hmm.
corporation, you have the credit score for the business itself. On LLCs, you have some sort of report for the business, but I mean, then the main credit score is from the owners. So from myself and my partner, for example, for yourself, that's the credit score they're going to be looking for. But you will only need that credit score if you want to get money from, if you want to borrow money from someone. Other than that,
Mhm.
I mean, you're not gonna need the credit score, right? So
Mhm.
if you are buying services in the US, or if you're paying for products upfront, you're fine. But now, if I want to have a $100,000 credit limit to purchase equipment in the US, then another story. But that's going to be the same as myself here in Portugal, right? As my whole revenue comes from abroad, uh, and I'm not employed here in Portugal. When I go to the bank and try to finance a car or a house, the bank said, "No, I'm sorry, I just can't give you credit. You don't have collateral in the country." I mean, there's
Mhm.
a risk involved, right? So I think that is pretty similar to other countries, but you don't need to have a good credit score to do business in the US, to set up your bank account, or your Stripe account, or Shopify payments, or whatever.
Mhm. Brilliant, Diego. It's very cool. We have just a few names here. So you see Luis, which you were able to
Mhm.
talk to him. We have Pierre in Brazil from Ship Smart. We have Vinny in Ireland. He works a lot with Americans nowadays. Jens from the Danish E-commerce Association.
Nice.
And as always, we try to give them a voice. Actually, we do after uh, 30 minutes of conversation here. So I'll have just a few questions about scaling and a little bit of, let's touch a bit about politics and what's happening in the US. I think it's quite important to touch what's happening these days. But yeah, what do you see, after, let's say, initial traction? What becomes typically the biggest scaling bottleneck for companies? Is it capital, talent, distribution, warehousing? Where do you see that your clients, is it hiring, right? Talent, that they, uh, face challenges after,
Sure,
going
sure.
through the first big waves and yeah.
Sure. Look, that I mean, again, each business area has a different challenge. So let's talk about e-commerce, for example. In terms of warehousing, finding a good logistics partner, that's usually not a problem, right? It's actually, uh, I mean, it's usually simple and we have some partners. It's usually simple to overcome that challenge. Then the challenge is scaling in terms of sales, right? Now that you have the product, you validate the market, you know who you're going to be selling to. How can I scale that? Uh, there are some challenges in terms of capital for inventory, right? If you have
Mhm.
a longer sales process in terms of ordering from China or from anywhere, and then you have to move it to the US. So talking about 6 months to sell a product or whatever. But there are some companies in the US that they give that capital based on the previous history from the company itself. Actually, one's
Mhm.
from the founders of Brazilian. It's called Sellers Fine. Amazing company
Right.
based out of Miami. I mean, they don't work only for Brazilians, and I don't even think that Brazilians are a big part of their market. But they do offer capital for companies in the US without residents, as long as they have traction for at least 3 or 6 months in the US. So again, there are alternatives for the capital in terms of e-commerce. In terms of software as a service, to be true, the main challenge is to find consumers. The companies that we work with that are software providers or SaaS or startups, they're gonna usually have their whole team abroad.
Mhm.
So the challenge is actually to uh, validate the product, the market. Once they validate it, how they're gonna keep expanding and finding new customers. So it's always in terms of sales, not process. But then when you get to services that will require someone local in the US, so we have,
Mhm.
let's say we have a client that is software, they do software consuming, technology consuming, whatever, in one specific area. In their case, they need to hire local salespeople and local employees. Then it becomes a problem, usually in terms of costs, right? You're gonna pay $150,000 a year for a good salesperson in the US, and if I mean that's expensive, right? Versus what you're gonna pay for someone in Portugal or someone in Brazil, for example, in Latin America.
Mhm.
So hiring in the US, it's expensive, it's not cheap. That's
Mm-hmm.
one thing. The other one, it's in
And
terms of
yeah, go ahead. I'll ask my follow up, but just
no,
go ahead. Sorry.
it's in terms of specialized service. So we have a client that
Mm.
they run IoT equipment in large factories. Then
Mm-hmm.
they need employees really well qualified for that implementation to maintain those manufacturers plants. That in their case, they started working with clients in the US, JBS, Budweiser, other larger companies, and they had to import from Brazil some of the employees. So they had to take all the visa process and then move them to the US to be able to deliver the service. So then, of course, immigration is always another challenge, right? That involves politics today and economics and so on. So I would say that probably those are the key challenges.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah, my question was more, I think around, I think I missed it. I'll get back to it. Because yeah, I think the hiring part, it's more like all of the US, you see that hiring is expensive in general comparing to or
Mhm.
there are variations. Like if you go to the south of the US, it's those variations, they don't really matter in the greater scheme of things. Is it?
Oh, it's going to usually be cheaper to hire first in a state that doesn't have state income tax and states that are not
Mm-hmm.
well populated. If you
For
try compare,
example, for
for
example.
example, even Florida, zero state income tax and with a large population. But then if you go to Massachusetts, New York, California, Seattle, well, I'm sorry, Washington, high cost of living, high tax,
Mm-hmm.
high state income tax, then it's more expensive to have it there. But then if you go to Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, like the middle from the US, if you remove like
Mm-hmm.
West Coast, New York,
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts on the top, then the rest of the country will have like
Mm-hmm.
a less expensive workforce.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
very
Florida
interesting.
is a good place.
Not sure. So I like listening to the PBD podcast because it gives me. Not sure if you're familiar with them.
Mhm,
They're more like kind of like centered to the right,
mhm,
uh, but very capitalist ideas and so on. But it gives me an idea on the U.S. And so, for example, they talk a lot about people moving from Los Angeles, from California now to Florida, right?
mhm.
Which you were based in Florida because of zero income tax. So there's a lot of changes going there in terms of business, and I think we cannot like let's say look at that without touching politics, right? So for you, what's the current state of affairs when it comes to politics? Looking at companies that want to go to expand into the US at the moment. Is this the right time? Is there an opportunity? Yeah, there's Mr. Trump there taking decisions, that are controversial,
Sure,
to put it mildly. So, what's your take?
sure. Uh, Look, uh, the 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 main challenge it's in terms of the instability and insecurity, right? So as entrepreneurs, we are used to deal with some sort of instability, insecurity, but I mean there's a limit that we can tolerate and accept, right? Uh, so there are different ways to see with the new tariffs, for example. So if you are a company selling into the US your products and shipping from Brazil, for example, from Latin America, or even but mostly from Brazil right now, most Brazil and China. I mean, this is a hard time for you to start if you don't have a product with added value because of the tariffs. If you don't have that much margin. Um, I spoke with clients that manufacture in Brazil and they're selling in the US. What they're doing is they're absorbing some sort of a part of the new tariffs, and then they are charging more from the customer, so they can split now the new tariffs. But I mean, it's still they still selling well. I mean, they have their in those cases, their companies are well established for a longer time, so I mean, they didn't see a decrease in sales even with the change in price, but they have a lower margin. In terms of technology companies, software companies, whatever, it didn't make any change. So I mean, you still can sell to the US your service, your online service, whatever, without paying taxes, without paying tariffs, and even without paying taxes in the US, depending on the structure that we are and how you're operating. So zero tax in the US, like happens in the UAE. Uh, so I think that the key challenge here is how much stability you can tolerate. I
Mhm.
personally, I don't believe that the tariffs will be kept in 50% for Brazil for a long time. They
Mhm.
there was, I mean, there's an agreement with European Union right now that there's a minimum of 15% on tariffs, but some
Mhm.
products they were already they had already a tariff over 15%, so there's no change for those products. Other products like wine, there was zero plus one 19 cents per liter, something like this. Now it's 19 cents per liter plus 15%, so then it got
Mhm.
way more expensive. But I mean, the market's going to have to adjust because the tariffs will come to all countries. That's a fact, right? Colombia used to be zero, now it's 10%.
Mhm.
Mexico and Canada is still at 0% for the majority of the products because of the USMCA agreement. So I mean, Mexico is. So I mean, there's some nuance over there. Uh, for us, in terms of our clients, we have a few clients that they had a decrease in their sales, mostly clients based in Brazil that sell commodities, so they didn't have the margin to be able
Mhm.
to just adjust. So we have a large client that just told that they are firing 100 employees in south of Brazil because they expect to have a decrease in sales. But again, it's a commodity, right? So
Mhm.
low added value, but that happens. We have other clients that sell technology startups that didn't feel any change. Again, I
Mhm.
think that it's if you will really put time and effort and focus to grow a business in the US, it's still being as good as it was a year ago or 6 months ago or whatever. And again, the US is still being a huge market for a long time, right? 300 million people, e-commerce
Sure.
1.4 expected this year, 1.3, $1.4 trillion in sales. I mean,
Mhm.
still big.
Brilliant. Diego, we have the community. Yeah, Gustavo said that yeah. Please, everyone, you're very welcome to jump in and to ask questions. Jens, if you're interested, if you have time, I'm sure Jens had some meetings. Also, Jens has probably a few questions from his Danish customers. I can introduce you guys in private
Sure, sure.
afterwards. Vinny, welcome, Vinny. Go ahead.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Sorry, Jago. There we go. How's it going? I have a question for you. The last point you just made around service providers, I think is interesting. I fear more for service providers in the SaaS space than I do for product producers. I think if you're in the product space, the people are going to get hit most are the US consumer. They're going to pay higher prices, but they don't seem too perturbed by that either. The credit card debt at 1.3 trillion will tell you if they want to get something, they're going to find a way to finance it one way or another. And that's a whole other story. But I do think if you're a producer, cross border trade now becomes your growth to internationalization, and with trust being eroded in trying to do deals at a national level, which you've talked about as well. I think we have got to look to other places. Being in the European Union, we cannot take it that the 15% tariff is going to stick. I could not see a world where that stays there. But I've heard a lot of rumblings that Shopify are now struggling at enterprise level on the e-commerce side because their pricing structure is just too much. At the SMB level, I could see that being completely true. At enterprise, it holds up too, and in the B2B space because they're looking to take a piece of the pie in every transaction, and in B2B, that's just not going to work. So the technology platform that's masked as or the payments company that's masked as a technology company is in trouble. But I think if you trickle that down, then all the providers that have gone in and built SaaS products around them, I think they're the ones that are the next layer of risk. And I just wonder, is that something that you agree with or would see kind of different?
Mm, uh, Look, I agree in part of what you said. Look, even in GlobalFi, we didn't put our eggs on the same basket, right? We are
Mhm.
always, I mean, we have customers. Our strategy is to have customers from different countries because that way we can offset some of challenges from each individual country. And I think that the strategy of having something in the US, it can make sense through different perspectives and for each stage of company. So I mean, we've never set up as many companies in the US for Spanish clients, for example, because they're looking for different ways to work in terms of tax strategy because the high taxes in
Yeah.
Spain. The same in Portugal. So I mean, again, selling in the US, it's definitely a challenge. You mentioned something about the 15 on tariffs for services. Did I understand right or no? No,
No, I
okay.
just I was saying that from an Irish perspective, I think that the tariff is eroding trust in general, so
Hmm.
that we are looking to other
Hmm.
countries to do deals with at a national level. I mean, I just mean in general. I don't think we can continue to bank on the fact that the tariffs will hold in place.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
The kind of the follow on then strategically, I had a small direct to consumer brand myself. We ran it for about 8 years, and we looked at Mexico quite a few times from a manufacturing perspective. Do you see a future where Mexico can become strategically important as a manufacturing hub for people who are maybe looking to move out of the Far East? Is that something you're encountering at all?
You know that coincidentally, I had a live on Monday, on Tuesday for our clients, and one client, they manufacture carpets in Brazil, and they ship to direct to the US. But they also have a partner in Mexico that can finish the product. So they're telling, look, I'm negotiating with that partner in Mexico to actually I want to ship like the bulk or the raw material them. They're gonna finish and they're gonna be able to do the minimum 50 something whatever percent to become a made in Mexico product. The USMCA agreement finished in a few years, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
Uh, the major, I think, 2 years or 3 years. I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to last. But I think that there's definitely a movement in terms of companies looking to establish some sort of manufacturing in Mexico, not in the US because of the cost of manufacturing,
sure.
to overcome that barrier. Again, I would not consider that as a long-term strategy right now. It can be a short-term strategy for sure, while as long as the USMCA agreement is still active. But I'm not sure it's going to be renewed on the same terms, right?
It's
Tariffs,
unlikely to be. Yeah,
yeah, the tariffs, the additional tariffs in Mexico is 25%, and additional in Canada is 35%. But the fact that the majority of the products manufactured in Mexico and Canada, they do not suffer with the tariff anyway.
yeah.
So yeah, but again, I think that's way more on a political level discussion than something that's going to last for a long time. Also,
Yeah, it goes in cycles. I think the midterms will be interesting as well. And there's certain areas of industry that are benefiting more now. I did a lot of work in regulated industries at the beginning of the year, firearms, CBD oil, and other categories like that. And they're industries that are booming right now. And there's marketplaces being built for firearms. There's loads of other of categories of products that wouldn't have benefited before, whether we like that or not. But there are really buoyant parts of the industry as well. So it's interesting just to see during these political cycles what way it operates.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I think that the key challenge from the US, it's in terms of the stability and how international founders or international markets look for the US market, because the US market is really well known in being an unstable market, right? Unstable, stable, not unstable. I'm sorry, a stable market and a stable business environment. And I think that for the first time in the past, maybe, I mean, in my at least the past 20 years, it's the first time that look, there's some change that make people feel uncomfortable or uncertain with the future. And again, if you have a tariff that, I mean, if you're expecting a tariff of 10%, to start in 5 days. Now it's 50%. Now it comes down to 30 and then to zero. I mean, how are you going to project your cost or COGS, right? When and decide what's going to be your sale price. So I think that this is the key challenge at this time.
Yeah, it's not going to go away anytime soon. I think monthly planning and annual planning are going out the window for people.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the minimis, right? The exception up to $800 shipment. It was supposed to end in 2027, July 2027, and
2
then
weeks ago.
and then they said no, in 30 days it's gonna end. But I mean, it wasn't supposed to end in 2 years. No, it's gonna be in 30 days. So.
You're in, yeah.
But it's the first time, like, I've had a discussion now with people this week who said 2 weeks ago they wouldn't have considered an in-country strategy when it comes to the US. So putting a 3PL in place, putting full infrastructure in. This week they're now making decisions on who the 3PL partner is, how they're going to handle tax nexus, and all the things that you've described. So I was listening really intently to your conversation, because from an Irish business perspective, it now makes a lot of sense because of de minimis for most of the products that we manufacture, because they're not high value, to have a presence over there. And I think it's going to be a recurring theme. So great to have a network like this to be able to plug people into and say, hey, there's a lot of people that you can speak to with really good experience on the ground as well, which I probably wouldn't have said 3 weeks ago.
You know, Vin, that this is, I mean, the point that you brought, it's really interesting, because that's something that we've been discussing with some leads, and we saw increase in terms of that. Because what happens if you're shipping a $100 order to the US, you're gonna pay tariffs on the $100 order, right? But now if you have an entity in the US, or an importer of record in the US, but if you have an entity in the US, even if you're doing the cross-border shipment, your entity is not buying your products from Ireland or whatever for $100. They're now buying for $30 as the cost of the product, and you're gonna pay tariffs only on the $30, even though you're shipping directly to the consumer, right? So, I mean, us entrepreneurs, we are always gonna find a way, a smart way to try to overcome those barriers or those challenges that the government put on us. So even on the cross border, you don't have to have your products over there. You can still shipping abroad. But now with an entity in the US, you can just have that entity as the importer, paying what you actually the actually cost from the product, and then you pay less tariffs on the total order value.
And it's a much easier thing to swallow as a business, I think, at this point in time.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I have actually a question to you both, Vini and Diego, on the cross border. Vini, you working with working a lot with Americans. With you're also with Rick Watson there, so you're part of a lot of conversations. When it comes to cross border, what are your thoughts? I pulled the data here about on cross border trade. Now makes up 22% of global e-commerce. Not sure how much of cross border the US does. Probably a lot, of course, when it comes to e-commerce. But what's the conversation there, Vini? That
it's not as strong as I thought it would be, Carlos. I thought there would be more people saying part of our growth strategy now has got to include cross border. I think the first part is something that Diego said, which was there's no certainty around COGS right now, and I think until people start making decisions there, cross border is off the table for some people. But what I'm finding, I've just completed judging of awards across multiple different countries, but the brands that are winning and the brands that are doing well are the ones who have expansion plans. And where 2024 was kind of all about efficiency, 25 is about looking to new markets, looking to new channels. And the brands that are typically doing better are brands who are open to expansion into other countries. I think it's looking to see where there's margin opportunity. One other thing that's coming up in conversation a lot, and I don't know if you see this, Diego, is where we once had a time where if my family went to the US for a holiday, say 15 years ago, the chances were you get a pair of Nike trainers that you could never get in Ireland or in Europe, and they were different. But over the last 15 years, the idea of products being the same no matter where you go in the world means that we've got these two things happening. One is there's no selection, and the other is it then becomes where you're going to get it the cheapest. the conversations are now evolving to say, well, actually, should we start manufacturing niche products in smaller sections and for different jurisdictions to make sure that we can get, one, better pricing, and two, create some point of difference. So when people are engaging cross-border trade, there's a reason to deal with their brand. And I spent a bit of time talking to David Katz from Randa Apparel, and he said they're doing the exact same thing. So they started during COVID using signals from local markets to develop product types in a slightly different way and to manufacture differently. It also forced them to change how they manufacture. So they went to small batch manufacturing as opposed to large scale. And they can now turn things around a lot quicker. So that's had two impacts. One, they can get to market quicker with trending products and things they see as moments. And the other side of that is they're not putting as much strain on cash flow because they're ordering smaller quantities. And the best way I could describe that to you is that pre Taylor Swift, I think it was Levi's weren't selling at all, but they're now able to plot their sales profile depending on where her Eras tour was going. And the exact same thing happened for Wrangler when Beyonce planned her tour. Even down to states and cities that she was operating in, they could see their sales profile of specific styles, brands, and sizes, being the way that they started doing planning. So they've adopted that approach across most of their products. To give you an idea of their size, 1 in every 4 pairs of work pants in North America is made by Randa Apparel. So they're not a brand group that maybe everybody is familiar with, but they are in pretty much every household in North America. So they're the sorts of little things I see smart brands doing. And not everybody has maybe the capability to do that, but I think as a thought process and a way for moving commerce forward, I find it really interesting. Sorry, it's a bit of a ramble.
No, very interesting. Diego.
No, the points I brought there, they're really, really interesting. And I think that the niche product or niche production or a strategy per country or per market, depending in the size of the country where you are.
Yeah.
It's something that with the data that now you can collect and process and analyze it, that makes lots of sense, right? And that comes again to the point of the focus and the strategy. I mean, you can see that now. You can see the fact that now you can create products specific for each market or for each state of the country or in volumes as a challenge or as an opportunity, right? From the Wrangler and the jeans brand, they saw that as an opportunity. How are we going to predict that? How can use that data to go really specific in that location? So again, I think that it always come to the how you're gonna how do you want to see the challenge and how you're gonna adapt to it. But even another thing that in cross border or in e-commerce, the fact that now the distribution channel or the community that you create around the product, it's as important or even more important than the quality of the product.
Yeah.
It's also that help small companies or small brands to get into the market, right? Now you don't have to have a huge distribution in terms of now you don't have to sell on Walmart to be able to go to the whole US. As long as you create a community and then you can put on a Shopify store, I mean, you don't have you can start selling. So then there's another huge opportunity there.
There was something in the Shopify numbers that surprised me. Well, sorry, it surprised me positively. For 8 quarters prior to the last earnings call, they had growth in Europe of about 33 to 35% consecutive growth. This time they reported 49% growth. And I've always maintained that they leave money on the table every time they don't put more support here, because the support they have is terrible for integrators and for software providers and for brands. And they committed some more people in key territories here, one in the Nordics, up in Norway, Sweden, Scandinavia, that whole area. And then there was a few more in mainland Europe. But by just having a few extra bodies on the ground, it made it a different, like a jump of 15%. And within that, there's a very healthy cross-border trade element as well. I think the majority of those brands, I don't know the exact number now, but it's a very high percentage of them all have to, because Europe is such a big trade bloc. So I think there's a blueprint there. I think what we fail to realize is a little bit of what you're saying, Jago. It's community is really hard work. We've got to be committed to doing it every single day. It's not something we can do in bursts and hope that it survives. We've got to work at it all the time, and that's why I think the hiring process is going to get different. And one thing, as a mid-40s consultant, I'm very aware of the fact now there's a generation of people that operate in social media or entertainment platforms like TikTok, and they know it better than I do. I don't know how I could manage them. I think you kind of have to let them natively work through a platform for you without trying to provide too much structure for the work that they have. And I think that's an unusual place for us to be, where maybe we crave structure or we crave productivity, and we need to know people are accountable. Sometimes knowing natively how to operate a platform like this is way more important than the kind of structures of the role and responsibility. So I see the hiring being something that's going to change dramatically over the next 5 or 10 years.
It's true. It's true.
Very cool. Thanks, Vinny. Gustavo, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm going to get back. I think one of your first questions to Diego, which was that a lot of companies enter the U.S. market, and then shortly after they leave. And I was talking some months ago with some people that were helping companies in the U.S. and companies from Latin America, and they said, well, sometimes the companies from Latin America and some other countries where they have the currencies like let's call it weaker than the dollar, and the company said, okay, let's go to the US because dollar is better. But we were talking about that a lot of times they forget that they will need also to have their expenses in dollars. So do you see that a lot happening from, and if so, it's only a matter of, do you see that happening less? And if so, do you see that this is more like why did these companies go like that? It's just a dream for the companies. So we want to be in the American market, or it's only like a misinformation? Or
Sure. Look, I'm gonna give like an example that I just thought now. I want to lose 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 10 kilos, right? I'm gonna buy a training. Does that makes me lose weight? No, right? I have to work every day, diet, sweating to get to the right weight, right? And in terms of the US, it's like the same thing. It's really interesting because I learned it after moving to Europe that what drives an European client to set up a company in the US is different than what drives a Latin American client to set up a company in the US. They have different perspectives and different goals. But in terms of the Latinos, right, Brazilians and everyone in Latin America, we have that dream, right, the American dream. I'm gonna setting up the entity, and that's gonna drive me to achieve some goals or to success. And actually, starting the company sometimes not even the first step. That's going to be your second, third step. But then you have to work to get to where you wanted to get. And then it comes again to the focus, or how you're gonna, what the efforts you're gonna put over there, right? It's not just setting up the entity and I'll have your first sale. No, look, I have to set up the entity. I have to, if you're selling products, I'm gonna have to create my profile or my account on Amazon, or create my Shopify store. What strategy I'm gonna use it for to attract consumers. We have a client that I use as a case last month. They sell gold-plated jewelry, and they were trying ads in Instagram in the US, and they noticed that the cost was too high to convert the clients. So what they did, they start targeting the ads for Spanish speakers, women based in the US. So they focus on a niche where the cost per clicks or the cost per CPM, whatever, it's lower than in English because you have less competitors, right? Less competition. So then they found a way to attract the first customers, and then they start selling. But look, it took them a while to figure that out, right? Again, if that's not my focus to do that, I would just turn on the campaign. It's not selling. The market, it's not good. It's right. You can't do that. No, it's just because you just didn't try enough. Trial and error, adaptation, and so on. And I think that's the key challenge. Then we go back to the first question. It's the fail rate is higher. It's high because consumers are not entrepreneurs are not putting the right effort to adapt, invest, and develop the market. That's mostly, it's not because the market do not buy from them.
Brilliant.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
So we are, thank you, Gustavo. Thank you, Gustavo. Thank you, Vini. Diego, we are approaching now, well, 55 minutes already, plus some networking. So I need to let you off my hook. I think, you know, I think you touched some really interesting aspects about doing business in the US or expanding internationally. So number one, be prepared to invest your time. It's not only financial resources, but investing your time, allocating time and energy. Like we're building Evolve, building a community. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes, focus, right? If you think you're going to spread yourself too thin, you'll be doing a lot of things. And if the founder isn't committed, that's also an experience I had. Things are not going to move, and you will likely fail. And then you've spent your resources poorly. The other thing you mentioned is very interesting. I think the state of current affairs, which is it's the first time probably in 20 years that things are a little more shaky, but still, the U.S. is still a very strong market. Massive ability to consume, right? So the market is there, and things are probably going to get better. But you also have to have some stomach now to cope with the uncertainty. And lastly, I think you and Vinny touched on some very interesting points about cross-border trade and how brands are localizing and going more like small batch, if you like, and using social media and so on to hire and really to spot talent as spot trends and talent as they go. So I think those are the main topics that we covered. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked, or things? One topic that we didn't cover, and
No.
if there wasn't, no.
No,
Then,
okay, was quite good. Thanks so much, Carlos, again for the opportunity. It was
of course.
talking to Vini. I've never spoke with him before, and also met Luis before on the other section. So thanks very much for the opportunity, and anything that I can help, I'm always and more than happy to do so.
Of course. Thanks very much. What's the best way to learn more about GlobalFi and about you? And get in touch, Diego.
Sure. I mean, GlobalFi, it's pretty simple. Globalfy.com. Pretty simple to get to our website to learn more about our services and the way that we work. And actually, I'm on LinkedIn. So if you search for my name on LinkedIn, Diego Sampaio, I'm actually already connected with a lot of Evolve members. But always happy to connect, share there. And then, I mean, anyone coming to Portugal or to Porto, let me know. Let's have some good wine over here.
Sweet. So that was Diego Sampaio for you, ladies and gents. Thank you very much, Diego.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.